Let's talk about why your hair is not growing. This is a really common question that I get asked, and there are a few reasons why your hair may not be getting longer. Maybe you feel like it's not getting past a certain length. Maybe you feel like no matter what you do, it just doesn't get longer. Maybe you're seeing growth come through when your roots need doing, but it's just not being reflected towards the ends for some reason. In this video, I'll explain the reasons for perhaps having stunted hair growth, the signs to look out for to help you figure out what might be causing your problem, and the best course of action to take to help your hair push past its limits. So when it comes to the reasons behind why your hair is not growing, it makes sense to really think about what's going on. I will say, first of all, that it's important to understand the cycle of hair growth. So every follicle on your head, it goes through periods of growing and shedding, growing and shedding. That's why it's normal to lose around 100 hairs a day. The normal shedding that happens can increase in some months and it can decrease in others, so it's normal throughout the year to notice sometimes periods of a higher amount of shedding. Typically, this is nothing to worry about, and it does tend to sort itself out in due course. But what happens when you have quite a quick hair turnover? So what I mean by that is where your hair doesn't grow for very long before that strand sheds and a new one replaces it. Of course, the strand doesn't have that much time to grow very long before it's shed and a new one starts to grow out in its place. Now, most people experience this around their face. So the fine hairs that you get in these areas and around your hairline, you might look at these and feel like they never quite seem to get as long as the rest of your hair. You may think this is breakage, and there's a chance that it could be if you use a lot of heat or coloring products on your hair. But there's also a high chance that it's just these hairs around the front don't grow for as long as the rest until a new one replaces them. It's important to know that because sometimes you can feel bad about somehow you're damaging your hair because you can't seem to get these areas as long as the rest. But this can be happening all over as well. If this is the case, it's kind of just one of those things that make up part of your DNA. Some people can grow their hair meters long, others struggle to get it past the collarbone. I'll explain in more detail what you should be looking at if this does sound like you. The second reason, of course, is breakage or damage, and sometimes it's breakage that you can't see. I call this micro breakage. This is the tiny pieces of the ends of your hair kind of flaking away without you even noticing. This means that when your hair is growing from the roots, it's not being reflected in the ends, so you can feel like your hair is growing, but it's not getting any longer. So what signs can you look out for? If you feel as though your hair has a quick turnover and is shedding before it gets a chance to grow longer, some signs that you'll notice are that your hair feels thicker at the roots and sometimes in the middle, but it gets very thin towards the ends no matter how well you look after it. That's a good sign that you're trying to push your hair past its kind of average length, meaning that not every strand is making it past a certain point. You also might have more hair shedding daily than your friends or your family members. You might notice that your brush is more full of hair than others, and that's a really good sign that you do have a quicker shedding cycle. If you feel that it may be due to damage or breakage that your hair is not getting longer, signs that you can look for are, does the root of your hair seem bigger than the amount your hair's grown since you last colored it? That's a really good sign that you're growing properly, but it's not sticking around at the ends. You also might notice that when you're brushing your hair or styling your hair, small pieces of hair left on your clothing. That's a really good sign that you're actually causing breakage when you're styling your hair yourself at home. So what can you do about this? How can you push your hair past its natural stop point, or how can you stop that breakage from happening? First of all, if you have decided that it does sound like you have a quick turnover of the hair growing cycle, one of the best things that you can do is make sure that your health is as good as possible, because a healthy body will grow healthy hair, and because you don't need your hair to survive, if you're deficient in any minerals, not taking in enough protein, your hair will be compromised. Depending on your age, you can look at doing a hormone panel to see if there's anything that could be adjusted with your levels, and of course blood work can be really helpful as well. There are some drugs that you can use. Minoxidil is a spray, and I believe you can now take it as a pill as well. That's a really good way of stimulating your hair growth, and that keeps your hair in its growing phase for much longer. That means that it's growing for longer before it sheds and a new one replaces it, and over time that can increase the average length of your hair. If it's breakage that you fear is happening, it's all about your routine. First thing that you can do is be far gentler with your hair in everything that you do. Brush it at half the speed, heat style it less if you can, go to the salon more frequently for the good stuff like treatments and trims, and less frequently for the bleaching or chemical services. My favorite home tool to stop breakage is of course Olaplex. If you've followed me for any length of time, you'll know this. Olaplex is probably the strongest tool that you can use at home to minimize hair breakage. But it's also important to not forget about moisture, because you need that softness and suppleness and hydration on the ends of your hair to stop any brittleness, which could also be causing breakage from friction, brushing, wear and tear. So serums, oils, beautiful moisturizing conditioners are really, really good. It's also important to note that it's not actually hydrating your hair that's happening. We don't want our hair to be hydrated, although many companies use that terminology. Hydrated means full of water, and that actually makes our hair weaker. This is a bigger topic, and I'll go into this more in a future video, but what we really want is that conditioned, that softness, and frankly it's kind of like a lubricated feeling to your hair, for want of a better term. So products that contain conditioning agents like conditioners, washout conditioners, leave-in conditioners, and moisturizing masks are going to do a really good job of keeping your hair soft and silky, shiny, and if it's not catching when you're running your hands through it, it's far less likely to be breaking. Hopefully after watching this video you've got a pretty good idea about which one is happening to you. Is it that quick hair turnover and shedding that's causing your problem, or is it perhaps being too rough with your hair and that micro breakage? Let me know in the comments which one you've decided it is, and perhaps I can give you more advice on how to help.